This is the Power of OZmosis podcast, powered by the Vidwheel Creator Network. Hi there. This is the Power of OZmosis video podcast powered by Vidwheel Creator Network. I am John Osberg, and I am joined today by none other than John Bourdage, the social intelligence operative himself. John, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be back.
It's great to have you back. It's been a little bit since we've last filmed, and so this is actually going to be a bonus. We had our three-part series that a lot of great feedback on that, and that was all things networking and social strategy. We're going to keep that conversation going, but now with the flavors of planning, and then how do we execute that plan through a strategy, and then how do we stay accountable to that plan? So again, it'll be planning, strategy, accountability, something that I know I need in my life. I've been working on iterating, and I know many of our viewers are also going to be excited to learn more about this. So John, let's jump right into it as we always do. And why don't you start us off with maybe the focuses on planning?
You know what? Here's what I want to talk to people about. First, ask yourself the question, why plan? Let's talk about that in the beginning. Why plan? Well, things don't just happen. They don't happen unless you plan. All right. So what does planning do? Well, it forces you to forecast, kind of look into the future and think of where you want to go, what you want to do. Planning also allows you to consider alternatives, which increases your options, which is really important because many times what people think, if you're just jumping from A to Z, you're not looking at all your alternatives, not looking at all the paths you can go down, where you should be. You want to be able to look at that. It forces you to use time as a resource. So now when I'm planning, I'm realizing that I have to really manage my time, and time is one of the three great resources in any business strategy. It's time, my talent of my people, and then my budget. But I really have to think about how I'm using that time, that commodity. Here's the other part about planning that I love. Let's go to the headspace. It puts you in control. You start feeling, once I'm planning, I have some control of this time. When you do that, it clarifies your thinking. So you're thinking clearly. You have a clear direction of where you want to go. And the other part of it is it allows you to deal with the rapid change. You know, changes are moving in life. If I'm planning, if I'm 2-3 steps ahead of it, the impact is far less than if I'm just kind of winging it. So that's why we plan. All right. This is kind of, I want you to get an understanding of where we are with this. Okay. So if I'm planning, if I'm making a plan, how do I start this? First, I need some think time. This is a big one. You and I have talked about this. Think time is incredibly important. And I always say to a lot of executives that I work with, that I coach, listen, schedule yourself some think time, some quiet think time. Okay. What do I want to ask myself? The three big questions, these are the basic questions of strategy, and personal strategy is what we're going to focus on now. First, number one, where am I now? Where am I now is a big question because it's my starting point. It's my center. Here's what I always say to people. I want you to slow down and just take that one question, think about where am I now, and be perfectly honest with yourself where you are. All right, because that's the beginning. If that's skewed, if I'm not, I'm going to be starting in a false place, and I never want to do that. That's question one. Question two is, where do I want to go? Now, this is one that takes a lot of think time, a lot of thought. You know yourself, being an entrepreneur, how much time did you think about where you wanted to go or what you wanted OZmosis to be?
I mean, it was.
Do you remember
months.
back?
Yeah, I mean, it was well, years. Honestly, John, it just stopped. Years to get to the point to even have the courage enough to say I want to do this. And then, you know, I changed. I chose a slightly different strategy about kind of just pulling the ripcord pretty quickly, which then forced me into plan mode, right? And then the strategy around executing the plan, and then staying accountable with mentors, with myself, and with my clients. And I wanted to say one more thing. So I know you often have said to me, and many others have said to me as well, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
Absolutely.
Right? My favorites.
Absolutely. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So here's the other part of it that you're thinking about is that last question is, once I figure that out, is how do I get there? How do I get to where I'm going or where I want to be? That's a big question because I've got to think about those actual steps that get me to where I want to be, where I'm going in life. All right. So those are the three main questions. Where am I now? Where do I want to go? And then how do I get there? So let's talk a little bit about that. In the 3 questions, you could kind of expand that to a formula and strategy, which is called GHOST, which is goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. So when I ask myself, where am I now and where do I want to go? That's basically the goal, the objectives, and then how do I get there is the strategy and the tactics. Let's get down a little bit into, once I figure that out, tactically, where do I need to set this up. So how do I do this? I always say, listen, start off with creating a monthly master task list. Okay. So I've got the task list of what do I want to achieve every single month, get done to move myself forward to where I want to go and where I want to be. All right. That's the key. First, I start with a master task list. I've got 2 sections within that task list. One is business, the other is personal. So because I'm going to always be moving on those strategies on 2 levels. What am I doing business-wise? What am I doing personally? That's really important. So now I have that, because if I can stack those, then I can say, okay, every month I'm getting something done. In each quarter, now I'm getting done what I want to achieve. All right, in the master task list. The next one is I need to take this and I need to move this down into the daily. So I create a daily task list of those things. So I look at my master task list for the month, and then I start plugging into my days within the month what I need to do to achieve everything I need within that month. That's really important that I do that I really start plugging these things in so they don't get lost. All right. As I say to someone, I've said this to all the executives that I work and I coach with. If your strategy isn't driving your day to day, all right, you're not going to get it done. So I need to plug this in. The other big part of this, and then we'll talk a little bit about this, John, is prioritizing. All right. I need to create a priority for it. Is my A, B, C priorities on my task? A is vital. That's things that need to be done. B is important, and C is like an optional. So here's the methodology with this. If I give those priorities, and let's say it was a crazy day and all I got done was the A's. If I get done just the A's, 80% of what I needed to get done that day is done. 80% is done. Okay. So that's really important that I'm able to get that what's most important done. Then B's are the important. I can do my A's, I can do my B's, and there again, C's are optional. But prioritizing really is key to being effective with it. What did you find when you were working? What you're doing now, you and I have talked about this.
Yeah, in terms of priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in the beginnings there, John, and again, like you said, we've talked about it at length, and thanks again for all your advice and mentorship. For me, it was, let's get obviously first the shell or the foundation of the company, so that, LLC, all those basic operational things. And that was kind of, easy, but then it was obviously client acquisition mode, while also then kind of concurrently building out offerings. I had already had that planned out, but it was, for me, it was hyper focus on ensuring that clients are having a great experience. They were seeing value, because right in those beginnings, right, make or break it. You get that 3-month, 6-month contract with a couple clients. I was hyper focused and borderline obsessed on making sure that everything that we talked about was being fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? And that helps you. Like, here's what I always say in business, as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, we're a one-man show. So everything relies on us to get done. It's the setup, it's the marketing, it's the networking, the marketing, the selling, then the execution. I remember in my early days, I did some work in conjunction with Dale Carnegie. And the gentleman who ran Dale Carnegie said to me, listen, John, I spend 60% of my time, of my days, is marketing and selling. The other 40% is facilitation. And he was absolutely right. And I think a lot of people too, when they get into this, they don't realize that. Number one, I was actually doing work with UB, just gave them a lecture about 3 weeks ago. And the woman said to me, you know Hadar Bourdage?
Hadar, she's a rock star.
Hadar, amazing lady. She is. She's incredible. And she said to me, a lot of the young people that they don't even want to go out and work for firms. They want to become consultants. And I said to her, they should understand what you need to do, what you need to go through to become a consultant, to build a successful business. all that time you're spending not consulting, but finding clients, doing the networking, doing the marketing, and then thinking like the think time, where am I going next with this? All right, where's this going? All right. I've been through that process. I was walking through the process with you. It's been, how long was that journey for you?
Oh, I mean, I'm still in it, John. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of just like iterating, right, and trying to find that perfect balance. I think for me, again, I'm unique. I'm maybe on the outskirts where it's something I'm trying to work on. I think it's a strength, but it's also a weakness at the same time, which is that constant iteration, right? Constantly searching. It can be exhausting, but obviously, if you find a breakthrough and then it sticks, and then that allows you to catalyze growth, and great. But and I just want to say one more thing too for our listeners and watchers with what we're talking about, this thing time. I have gotten into a habit, thanks to our conversations, into literally putting in intentional time in my calendar, like 1 to 2 hours, where I call it blocked off osmosis focus time. And that's where it's no one can book on my automated scheduling tools, nothing. No one can book in that time, so that I can actually set aside the time to go inward and take care of what I need to, because it can get easy. It can get easy. Like yesterday, I was with the mayor of Niagara Falls. I had meetings at Trek. And I realized I don't think I cracked my laptop open more than once, and wasn't able to get anything done. So some days are like that though, right, John? You got to make exceptions, but
some days are like that. And so, because someone asked me about this, so we've got all these tasks and we have all these things to do, and they're like plopping it right here. It just goes here. And I go, listen, you got to spread the peanut butter across the bread. Okay. You just don't put it on one end of the bread. You've got to spread it across the bread. And that's where you look when you're planning and using, we'll talk a little bit about a planner. When you're using your planning tools, you look at your schedule, what needs to be done. And then there you go. You're doing exactly that, where you go, okay, I have this slot here, which I'm going to take and I'm going to put for my planning time, my think time, my planning time. This is incredibly important in business, but also in your personal life. What do I want to do? Because it comes down to what you and I have talked about many times, that strategic cut. So I have my to-do list, and then I have my not to-do list, because I only have so much time. That resource of time is finite. To make the most of it, I have to really look and start planning on how I'm going to use that time. All right. That's really important, because like you said, that time for that day, you realize I can't put anything else in there, because all that's going to be eaten up. All that time is going to be eaten up. So, but if you're planning it, you're ahead of it. If you're that type of person that's not planning and everything seems to be getting away from you, that's where you are. All right. You need to go back. You need to start planning. You need to start looking at this.
100%. And John, and this is not necessarily within the confines of our conversation, but I'm selfishly, for myself and for others, I struggle with building agendas on a daily basis. So I did this with a couple podcasts ago. Maureen Kemeny, who's a transformation coach, incredible. On the spot, I just say, hey, listen, I'm struggling with my running and my fitness, to Maureen. And then she literally, on air went through some of like the questions, the discovery, and then some of the thoughts and the concepts for me. So I'm curious from you, John, how would you guide me, right, in real time here? How would you guide me to say to someone who's struggling with building their agenda, right, their daily and weekly agenda, same as a plan? I found, just for some insight, I found that I've been too specific with things, and then I get bogged down in just building the agenda. And then of course, when that happens, you just, you don't finish it, you don't build it at all, and then you forget about it. But I've thought of going more broadly, but again, I'm still trying to iterate and still not finding that sweet spot. So maybe we'll just focus on daily agenda, right? Like you wake up, okay, then you do this, you do that. Next thing you move here. Right. So I'm curious for thoughts on your side, maybe even your daily agenda, whatever you think.
How I do this, my agendas are built weeks in advance. So when I have things plugged in. Okay. Cool. So I look at, I first put down, let's say, my appointments and what I do for business. Then I'm looking at my task list, my master task list, business side and personal side. So once my business is in, where's my personal? And then I'm looking even on the master task list, I'm giving them priorities. And that's the big one. What is A, priority to you, John? Vital. What's B, important? What's C, optional? Optional. Listen, I have some things right now in the month on my personal side that are C's. They're optional. I can move them into December or January. It's not going to be earth shaking. There's certain things that are more time sensitive, but I'm always doing that ahead where I'll have some time on the weekend where I'll just sit with my planner and just make sure that I have those weeks are in. Now, I have a client that I'm just working with. We've plotted out things for December. So that lays down in days in December my coaching with them and with their people. So I realize that's all plugged in. Then what do I plug in around it? So my vital, my A's, then my B's, then my C's. So there again, if I'm getting my A's done and some of my B's done, and by the end of the month, some of those C's didn't get done, it's not really that huge an impact to me because they're an optional priority.
And part of cut, that's, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's going back what you're saying. That's the cut. Listen, I have that time. What is most, important? What's my most vital? If I got my A's and I have my B's, I feel good about it because I've done really the important things. And I've done what you're talking about. I've done cut, which means I haven't wasted my time on things of really low importance or priority. And a lot of people do. They get caught up in those details.
Oh, and so on that point, right? Part of cut is another word that starts with C, is to catalog, right? So something that I think I've done and it's helped me is to literally catalog everything you do on a daily, weekly basis. Typically start with the day, right? And just think, like, even running through the day, get your planner, get a notepad with you and write out the things you're doing, right? Time logging, right? So you can kind of see, oh my God, I spent 2 hours on social media, whatever the example is. So, but then it's like, well, I spent an hour on sending emails back that maybe weren't that necessary. So then, get that grand catalog of what it is that you do daily. And then, it takes that awareness to first know, okay, A through Z, what I do on a daily basis, then assign A, B, C, right? And then so that there's that awareness, and maybe some of the things don't even make A, B, C. Maybe they're not even optional. They're totally just non-self-serving, and you have to altogether get rid of those. So, no, that's great insight.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. So when I go back in my planner, I have, your daily task list. So I go through it. When I wake up in the morning, I take 15 minutes in the morning and I look at my day. I give myself that early morning. So where am I in the day? Now, I have clients now in California. I need to talk to them, but I can't really call them till noon because they're 3 hours behind us. So you start looking at where you fit things in. All right. And how you do that, where the priority is. Once you get on that, you start seeing it. But if you go back and you start looking at it and you go, wow, this thing that I keep putting on there is on a C and it never gets done, then you can look at it and go, is it really a priority, or does it need to be cut out of it? So, all right. So, because if you don't, you can plan, but if you don't execute this in the tactical, all right, you're never going to get that done. It's not going to move you forward. And understand, I've had to do this over the years, simply because as an entrepreneur, as well as I do, you're a one-man show. If you don't do it, no one else is going to. It's just not going to get done. So taking it from the plan and then putting it in the action is your plan, is your strategy, driving your day to day. And here's the thing I always say to people: don't get frustrated. It's like anything else, any other skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. All right. Over time, you're going to see something that you can get a considerable amount done. When I look back and look in my planner, look what I've done on my task list to see what I've done, I like it. It's a sense of satisfaction because you know what? All the important things I needed to do, I've done. All right. I forecasted out into the future. So I have planning. I have my calendar for next year, things into next year. So I have an idea of what's going to be happening. It isn't a mystery. It isn't nebulous. And here's the other part of planning that I always like to tell people. It puts you in the right state of mind. And this is something we were talking with Dr. Barnwell. Okay. Where are you in your headspace? That's what planning does for you. What does it do? It makes you focused. So you get down and now you're focused. You understand now I'm not wasting time and I feel more confident. I feel more focused. All right. Confidence. All right. You've got this. You're in control. Okay. You always say, you got this. We've got this. Well, now you really are. You're confident because you've got it. All right. Here's the other part of it. I think planning is done for me too. It gives you a mission in your life. You develop the mission. There isn't all this nebulous time out there or not really sure. I'm developing the mission. I've created the mission. I have the mission. And when you develop that mission in your life, it gives you that ability, really, that clarity to do the cut. This is not a part of my mission. This is out. This is vital to my mission. So now this is in. I'm planning this. This is in, and there again goes back to that confidence, that satisfaction that, you know what, I'm going in a direction where I want to go. Because you have to remember, all of this is your personal journey and yours is individual. And that planning allows you to decide where you want to go and what's important to you.
Powerful. Powerful. Let's talk more strategy if we've covered,
Okay.
if we've covered planning well enough. I love that. And thanks for the impromptu talk on agendas and planning daily. So maybe some strategy here now, how to implement
Strategy.
this.
Let's talk about basic strategy. What is the foundation of strategy? It's two things, and this comes in your think time. It's observation and reflection. Okay. I want to observe, in my life, what's happening. I want to observe in business. Everyone today is in a rush. So they're going from first gear to fifth gear. And there's where the problem lies. I do this with a lot of my clients. I'm saying, don't speed it up, slow it down, because you need, in that think time, which you're giving yourself, all right, is I slow down, I observe, I look at what's happening, and then I reflect upon it. So from those reflection, you're going to have, all of a sudden you get those revelations like, wow, okay, I never thought of that. I never saw that. All right. As you begin to see that, from those, you're going to take, and that's where you build your strategy from. That's probably one of the most important things I can tell people is when I do that observation reflection becomes insights. I get insights from that. From those insights, that's where I build my plan. That's where I build my strategy. All right. And most people don't slow down enough to understand that. The older I'm getting, the more I'm beginning to realize, the more experience I've had in business and life, if something moves too fast, it's a red flag to me. Because someone hasn't planned it, it's moving. Sometimes things do move quickly, but I think many times people push things without thinking and doing that reflection and saying, okay, because in strategy, as in your planning your schedule, that time you take to think and reflect will save you hours, days, weeks, thousands of dollars on the other end. That investment, that small investment, saves you so much. Listen, I've learned that one personally. In my younger days, you're always on the move. You want to be successful. You want it to move. You're always in that go mode. But all of a sudden you say, how did I get here? Well, one of the things I found is, because I'm not planning, is I didn't look at all my options. I had 5 options and I only picked one, or I only saw 2, because I didn't sit back and say, okay, what are all my options? Correct. So I have my plan. I have my backup plan. So when you're planning, what do you have? Well, you have a main plan, but do you have contingency? All right. There's an old military one that I love. It's called PACE. So PACE is your primary, your alternate, your contingency, and your emergency. If you ever thought it that way, if you're going into something, all right, and you're planning. So what's my primary plan? What's my alternate plan? Okay, so there's things that are going to move and you need what they call calibration. What's my contingency? Things aren't going right. And if it all hits the fan, do I have an emergency plan? The other one, a big one I see people do, is they get positive and they're optimistic, but have you risk assess what can go wrong and created those contingencies and those alternate plans for when things don't go right? All right. How many options do I have? How many roads can I go down? So you've got to think about that. All right. And as we've done this, even with Dr. Barnwell, as we're talking about his concept, we started seeing other ways he can move with this, other areas that he can apply his concept. And that's what you definitely want, because it's starting to go, okay, I have more avenues with this than I had ever thought I had before. And here's the one thing I always tell people: remember, options are power. Options are power.
And I'll just say this back to the busy thing and slow down, not speed it up. Right. I think we're conditioned as a society, systematically in a way. But I call back to, I think he's probably my all-time thought leader, Jim Rohn, aside from you, John. Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins' mentor, right? Don't mistake busy for productive.
Absolutely.
And that's something I tell myself daily. I literally said it this morning. I under my breath or in my head, like there's these little mnemonics that I use, does this, I ask myself, does this serve me? Right? Is this really a part of the core mission? Don't mistake your schedule today. That seems busy for being productive. We need to find that productive time, which is going back to think time. So Just one of my all-time favorites. And I actually I've worked completely to eradicate the word busy from my schedule, or from my vocabulary, from my language, because right, it puts it in my own head that, man, I am so busy, and then you stress yourself out, and everyone else too. Like, it's such a classic thing, been so busy. I hate to call anybody out that uses, maybe they're not even thinking about it, but busy, in my opinion, depending on the situation, could be just that. If I'm following up with you, John, and I want to connect on something, and I just keep hearing busy, 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 that just tells me probably I'm not a priority. And even if you don't mean it that way, I may take it that way. And again, it's self-talk. Thoughts become things. So just some sidebar stuff.
And it's there's an old saying, and I remember when I worked with a gentleman. He was a political strategist, and he used to tell these candidates when he worked with them, a man who does not plan his time will have no time. All right. So it's that idea, am I plugging it in? And that's the other part of it I'm going to get to in a few minutes, is using planning tools. But if I plug it in, I don't have to worry about it, because I know I put it in. Even if it's a couple of days from now, I can let my mind focus on things I need to focus on, because I know in 2 days' time, I'm going to call you. I'm going to do the follow-up. All right. So it's in. I don't have to worry about it. Some of the other things we were talking about is strategy. The big one is know yourself. Okay. Know yourself, know your biases, know your leanings. Okay. If you're that type of person, like you said, you're running on the hamster wheel, think about, okay, I have to slow down. I know it's part of that. The other one I will always say to people, listen, when you're doing planning, stay out of the fray. Okay. In any business, in companies, I'm working with companies that it's other high energy businesses. I always tell the executives, listen, that I'm coaching, when you go to do your plan time, stay out of the fray, get that quiet time. All right. It's because it's going to pull you all over the place. You need your mind in that right mindset. Okay. Boots on the ground is the big one when you're planning. Stay in reality. That's the big one. Stay in reality. Where am I now gives me an understanding and grounding of where I need to start. All right. But here's the one thing I will say to you, with all the tools, we'll talk in a few minutes about the tools. Strategy and planning is really a mental process. It's a way of thinking. Does that begin to shape the way you interact with the world? And if you're doing this again and again, I was working with one executive, we started her on some planning tools, and all of a sudden one day, and it was the revelation. I said, this is fantastic. She says, John, I notice it's affected my way of thinking. This is how I think now. Where's the schedule? Where is on my task list? What is the priority? I go, that's the place you want to be. You want to have that start develop your way of thinking. Strategy. I start thinking strategically. So I'm not jumping from one thing to another. I sit back and I start looking at things, and I'm going, okay, now I'm observing, I'm reflecting. All right. I'm developing these ideas, these insights. That's where you need to be. All right. In business and even in life. Listen, how many times in life I've heard people say, how did I ever get here? It's because you didn't really think about it. You were just moving. And all of a sudden it's like, I'm in a place that I don't want to be, because you didn't really take a look at it. You didn't really plan. You didn't use any of your strategic or planning tools to influence where you were going to be. That's really important, that you understand that it's a way of thinking, and I've got to stop and start taking a look at it, all of it, business, life, everything else. Where do I really want to be? Because you see people get into life and go, wow, I never really wanted to be this. Well, it's because they didn't, and I'm sure you work with people like that. I've worked with people like that. And it's like, okay, now you have to start doing some strategic thinking. One young lady I was working with, she says, doesn't it just come organically? I said, the only thing that grows organically is the grass and the trees. Okay. Things will move, but you have to put influence on them to steer it to where you want to go. I believe that you have to move with the flow, but you need to steer that as well. And strategy and planning are ways in which you do that with it. One of the other parts, and you and I have talked about this, is the tools. Having a planner, whether it's electronic, whether it's paper, whatever you want to use, or both, that's fine. Both is having that idea where I have the planning tool. I live with my planning tool because it helps me. It supports me. There's so many things I don't have to worry about because I know when I'm getting to it. Something popped up. I had a client. I think I told you about it. It was just a week or so ago. We need you to fly to Las Vegas in a week and a half for 3 days to do training and working with our people in Las Vegas. So all of a sudden the planning tool is, okay, how do I move things around? How do I, and it allows me to do that without having to worry about it.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when I studied to be a butler in England, you're talking about planning. One of the things we always had were checklists. I have checklists in my phone of what I pack when I leave, when I get to a hotel, what I'm looking for, all those things. I don't have to worry about it. I just look at my checklist. Is this done, 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 done? I'm right where I need to be. But it's always using those tools and relying on those tools that will put you definitely in a far better place. I can tell you that from personal experience with it.
100%. Well said. And so we, coming back now, recap. So we're talking about building that plan. Strategies work the plan. Now, how do we stay with the plan through accountability, John?
Well, that's using the planning tool. So I'm not going to I use my planning tool for a month, and I've had these people do that. Is I've used the planning tool for a month, the planner, and then I'm not using it anymore. You have to be dedicated to it. So you're planning your month, you're planning your days, you're putting your prioritized task list for the month, and then plugging it into those days. That's the ritual that I do. I have planning time where I just sit down and look at it all right, and map it out. I don't have to sweat it because I know where everything is plugged in and it's guiding me. So if it's something, let's say something happens that becomes a major priority, I can move because I plan. I can move maybe those B's and C's and move them around and make it all work. I'm not running. I'm not, like you say, you're not sweating the details because it's all in there, but you've got to stick to the tool and use the tool. That's really important. If once you do that and it becomes habit, here's the thing about human beings. We can get into habits, sometimes bad, but on the other hand, if in 90 days we create a new habit, we tend to stay with habits. Right. If you work on using the tool and creating that habit, you're going to have that habit. It's going to stay with you. And then you just keep refining that as you move on and get better at using it.
100%. Yeah. And James Clear on my bookshelf here, Tiny Habits, or Atomic Habits, I should say, he talks just about that, right? It can be easy, back to even, in the strategy phase you were talking on, John, where people say, I don't know how I got here. It's because you weren't tracking. It's because you weren't present. It's because you weren't strategic. And so that rings true, no doubt. And accountability gets thrown around. That word gets thrown around so much. And that really is, I think, the special sauce that allows us to stay with it, right? And there's certain numbers of days that people like to go by, 21, 60, 90, to keep something going. What I would say too, say it's just a planner, millions of watchers and listeners, say it's just a planner. Keep it near you, keep it with you, right? Put it in your backpack if you're going to the office. Put it on your nightstand, at night. Bring it with you so that it's almost like an extension of you. It's a part of you, so that it's not like, oh crap, I'm at a coffee and I should have had my planner for notes or whatever it is. You have it with you so that you can constantly be seeing it, feeling it, writing in it. And then the other thing too is once you start to build those habits, go back, right? Even using journaling as an example, John, which I think helps us stay, level and present, and centered is the word, centered. Going back and looking at your entries, just to see over the last 30 days, what progress have I made? What trends have I made? Go with a highlight in there. So just adding some credence to what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing. The planning tool, when you have a planner, that planner is supposed to be everywhere you are. All right. Yeah. This is not something that you leave in the office. That's a tool you're going to take with you. My planner never leaves me. It's always with me. Okay. It's in my bag. That bag is always with me everywhere I go because it has my daily notes. I go back and say, okay, meetings I've had with people or ideas, it's in there. And then I can go back and reference that. And there's little ways that you can reference it. In the system I use is you have these little parentheses. So you put the day, or the date, like November the 11th, and then you put 1, 2, or 3, what came on the daily page, what entry was it? And I can jump to next year's calendar, put that in for reference and go back to my storage binder and look those notes up, reference. That's what we're doing. All right. That's what we were talking about. And many times that'll happen, or this is where we began. And some of the foundational ideas, you look like a superstar because you're not like, what did we talk about? Too many people will lose that. Why can I do that? Simply because using the planning tool. All right. It keeps me on track. And there again, like you say, if you're journaling, you know where you're strong, you know where you're weak, you know where you need to work, it's all there, but you have to work with the tool. Okay. Right. You can't drive the car without the keys. You need the keys to get in the car, to start the car, to drive the car. You need those tools. And remember, tools there again, I go back to tools are force multipliers. They multiply what I can produce and what I can do. And that's, I always want that force multiplication in my camp, in my wheelhouse.
Scalability, force multiplication, the names of the game, the name of the game, because that's how you get to where you want to go faster, but smartly, right? Like there are things we can do, right? I can coach 3 people over the next 3 months, or in tandem, I can build something internally, right, in the office here, which I'm developing, that I can then take and say, okay, part of what I would coach these people on, I'll put it in this, this course, $49, it's online. And so now it's not like, because I'm only, like time, we only have so much time, like you said in the beginning, John, right? So instead of being, tying myself up with coaching 3 clients and that's all I can handle, well, now there's a resource, there's an asset online people can buy, and you can accelerate your growth, whatever it is, revenue in this case, your reach, your influence. So thinking that
you only actually came up through thought time, where you're looking at, you go, how do I multiply me? How do I create something that goes beyond just my individual, what I can do? And that's all where you sit and you look at it and you think and you focus where do I need to be?
Right.
And that will be individual for each individual person. That'll be, your path is different than someone else's, but they need to sit down and you need to think about that and then develop a plan. Then as you get into the planning, after you get that done, is using the tools to make sure that you're executing on what that plan is.
100%.
Because here's the problem you see with most business. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but a lot of businesses will do a strategy where they go away for a weekend, they create this strategy, they put it in a binder, it sits on a shelf and no one ever uses it.
Right. Creating action. That's the number one. I mean, out of anything here, it's building the mechanisms to create action, right? The action to plan, and then the action to create the action against the plan. And then obviously, by doing that and doing that enough, you start to find that accountability, and you find that, you're seeing yourself progress in a positive manner. So tying this all up, right? So we talked about, again, planning, strategy, accountability. And I think I want to highlight the 3 things in the very beginning is the where am I now? Where am I now? Where do I want to go? And how do I get there? I think that's, one of the easiest things to take away. We can ask ourselves every single day. Even in the moment, like, you had a crazy day. It's 3 o'clock. Okay, I got to center myself, shut down the screens. Where am I now? Just in this day, in this moment, where am I now? Okay, I've done X, Y, and Z. What else do I need to do? Okay, here they are. Where do I want to go with the rest of my day, my time? And then, okay, here are the tools that I'm going to do to execute and get that done. So anything else you wanted to add in, John, as we wrap up?
Like I said, in the future, I mean, this is the beginning and I want people to kind of step in. This is kind of simple. We can start talking in the future a little bit more in depth about strategy and do some formulas like Ghost or some of the concepts of Sun Tzu that I work with my clients. But I think it's a great place to begin. It's a great place to begin with, just asking yourself the 3 questions, doing the observation and reflection, and then using those planning tools and give yourself a couple months and see how far you've moved just by doing that process, getting into that process and making it part of your life.
The number one ingredient to, building in systems that stick are recognizing progress, right? It's something that you mentioned earlier. I didn't get a chance to, throw it in there, but, progress. And even this morning, I felt it myself, kind of getting back in the groove with some of my fitness acts, getting all that done. I felt good. I could feel that even though it's small is better than none at all. And honestly, the best way to do it is to set it up in small increments. And then obviously over time, a couple of years go by and, boom, you're in a much different place.
Absolutely. And that's true. And you will definitely find yourself in a much different place. As you achieve those little wins, I always say that's like gas or jet fuel in the tank. It gives you that inspiration, that energy to keep moving in that direction and to move on to the next level. There again, planning is not only I can get this done, but it also works in my headspace where it's like, yeah, I feel confident. I feel in control. I have this. I've got this. And it gives me that energy to say, I'm going to move to that next level. I can do this. I'm here. I'm going to step up. I'm going to do it again using those tools.
Beautiful. Very well said. Yeah, this was timely for myself, and I'm certain for many others. I think the planning discussions on planning the strategy behind it, and then the accountability. Honestly, I think the accountability is something that I've seen so often. That word accountability partners get thrown around. So, John, as always, really appreciate you dropping all this thought leadership gold. A true social intelligence operative you are, and honestly, a modern day samurai, right? Samurai, in the way that you embark on life. You mentioned Sun Tzu, the art of war and all that. So anyway, thank you. And of course, as always, thanks to Vidwheel Creator Network for the support and the podcasting gear. But John, it's been a pleasure and a nice bonus for our 3-part series we released earlier this year.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for having me on. Take care now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.